Hello, welcome to Tiny Chair Talks, where we have big conversations in tiny chairs. Have you ever received a text message, a phone call, a visit from a friend, and they've just shared with you that they've been experiencing abuse? What should you do during those situations? What's the right thing to do? Well, let's talk about that. Today, we have with us a very special guest, Mrs. Joey Tolbert. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me here with you today.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Yeah. So I'd like to know, how would you define abuse?
Well, abuse can be a lot of things. It can be intentional and unintentional. It can be physical, spiritual, mental. It could be a lot of things.
It's very broad.
It is, yes.
So what should someone do if their friend approaches them and tells them that they've been abused?
That's a really good question. And I've been thinking about this question because it spoke to me personally, because I have been that person. I've been both of those people. I've been the one to have the abuse and go to a friend who've, confided in somebody. And I've also been the person where a friend came to me to confide in me because they had been through something. I also decided to ask some students in the Beat Center how they would respond. And the response that I got that really, I almost felt bad that I didn't go here first myself, but the response that really hit me as like, yes, this is the first step. And that is to believe them. If they are coming to you, don't question it, because over 95% of the time, statistically, it happened. So believe them first and listen. Just listen, because they're at their most vulnerable at this moment, right? And they're coming to you. When I was in high school, a close friend of mine came to me and said that she had been raped. And I remember we were sitting in her room. This was just like, for me, it was just like any other day, going to one of my best friend's homes to hang out in her room. I had no idea that this is what I was going to hear from her. And I remember, I think, being in shock for her, being in awe at how brave she was being, because she was telling me about all of this. And it wasn't something that had just happened. She'd been dealing with it emotionally for a while. So just sitting there and listening to her and being a good, safe place for that information to land is so important. Offering to go with them for help is a good, to offer it. Now, it could have been something that happened a long time ago. It could have been something, and something triggered it, and they're reliving something. Maybe they had suppressed and it's coming back. It could be fresh. But yes, believing them, listening are the two major first steps.
Yeah. And what would you say are the first steps you shouldn't do?
Well, obviously saying, are you sure that really happened? Let's go back, and did you cause this yourself? Is this something that, you don't want to go down that road. Some people do. I've heard it. It's cringy, you just, you can't go down that road. They're looking for a safe space. If they're coming to you, they feel like you're that safe space. So, if they need a shoulder physically, give them that. hug if they want that. Ask, is this okay? Because you don't know what they've been through. Of course, when my friend came to me, having gone through what she had gone through, I didn't even know if she'd want me to reach out and physically touch her because of that situation. So ask. What can I do for you? I will be here for you. Would you like for me to go with you to someone that can help? If it's the police, if it's a counselor, whatever they need.
And how would you approach someone if you're suspicious that they are being abused? Maybe that friend has yet to say anything. Maybe it's an acquaintance. How would you move forward with approaching that person if you think that there might be something going on?
I think just starting with a very safe, how's it going? How are you doing today? Maybe they're in the middle of studying. How are your classes going? Start in a very casual manner. Offer, if you ever want to talk, my office is, I would say, my office is where it is. Behind the slide is what I usually say, because that's where it is, in the Beat Center. I'm here if you need me.
Yeah. And so what would you say are the best things to do for your friend after they have told you what they've gone through? Not the immediate response, but the week later, or it's been a month later. What are the proper ways to continue to follow up with that person? Or should we follow up with that person?
I think follow-up is good. Checking in. Hey, was thinking about you, praying for you. Prayer is key. I mean, the Holy Spirit can get to people always, right? Yeah. Prayer is a good thing. I've been thinking about you, praying for you. How are you doing? Whatever you do, don't go around and blab about it to somebody else. That's not a good idea. There might be some situations where they might be a threat to themselves or somebody else. Then you have to maybe find a safe person, a licensed counselor, somebody that you can go to that will be confidential. So I don't want to say that there's never a time where you would go for help from somebody outside of yourself. But as much as possible, be that safe space. Check in on them. You can ask them, do you mind if I call you once a day and check in at this time? I would say most of the time they're going to say yes.
Yeah. And you mentioned prayer, and that is key for a lot of situations, for every situation.
Yes.
But how about for that person who kind of feels like blaming God for what has happened to them? How should they reason with having a conversation or continuing their relationship with God when they might have a desire to blame Him for the things that have happened?
That's a good question. And fortunately, our scriptures have lamentations. We have Psalms where the person who's writing them, they ask God, why? Why has this happened to me? Why are you allowing this to happen to me? Being in a world that has sin in it means that we're going to have really difficult situations. Things that happen to us, things that happen to our friends, our spouses, our children. And the devil wants us to blame God. But God says, you know what, there's going to be times when you're going to be questioning me. And in Scripture, we have those times. Yeah. It's okay.
He allows it.
It's okay to question God. It's okay to cry out in pain, to be angry even, because it's part of the process. It's part of the grieving process that we go through as humans. And it's in Scripture. So there are going to be times when the way that we I guess our spiritual journey is going to be one that includes these feelings of loss, of anger, of fear. And the most important thing is to stay connected to God. Don't close yourself off, because He's bigger than all of that. And that's hard to remember when you're going through an immense amount of pain. When you feel like something has been stolen from you, you know. And who is the great thief? It's Satan. He steals whatever he can, you know. He wants to take it all.
Yeah.
And leave us with nothing, and then have us blame God for that. I mean, He wants nothing more than that.
Yeah, and how would you describe God's thoughts towards abuse?
Oh, I think He weeps. I think when Jesus was on the cross and He had that moment of complete separation, and He felt that immense pain that His children were going to feel, I think He knows what that feels like. He's physically, mentally been there. He's felt the physical abuse. He's felt the separation in a way that it's magnified because it was for all humanity. So if anyone can sit there with us and listen, if anyone can be the shoulder, it's God. But I think we do need to have the actual physical people there too in our lives that we can turn to and lean on and lean into, and that's important as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, God despises it, does not want it for any of us. Unfortunately, there are times when things get swept under the rug and passed over. And I'm telling you, when I hear about that sort of thing, I just think, I don't want to have to be the people that sweep it under the rug, because someday they're going to have to give a good reason of why they allowed that to happen.
That's right. So we've talked about one perspective of our friends dealing with abuse, but what if it becomes personal? What should I do, or what should a person who is facing the abuse do once that's happened in their life?
So before I even went to school, when I was preschool age, I was exposed to information that should have never been presented to somebody at that age, or actually anybody ever, you know. And so, and it was a family that my parents thought that they could trust. So of course that has impacted me in so many different areas of my life. I have had to go, not had to, it was actually a privilege to go to counseling to work through it. I recommend that to anybody who is dealing with abuse, whether it's mental, physical, spiritual. Find a licensed counselor, somebody that you can trust. Do a series of sessions and work through it. I think I did around 8 or 9 sessions myself, so I'm an advocate for counseling. If it's something extremely fresh, like you've been raped, you've been physically abused, get out of that situation. Be a safe, find a safe place. If you need to go to the police, but find a safe place. I remember when I was a student at Southern, and a very close friend of mine had been in a situation with her boyfriend, or a guy that she had been dating, and she came driving back onto campus, and we just happened to see her when she drove back onto campus, and her car, like her door flew open, and she just like basically fell out of the car. And then other friend of mine, we went to her, and she was just sobbing, and we knew, we just knew that she just needed to be held in that moment, to be in a safe place. We sat with her for, I don't know, a long time, and just let her cry it out until she was, we're thinking, what happened? But we waited until she finally told us everything. And, just being a safe place for somebody, offering to take them to get help, offering to go with them, even if they need someone to go with them to a counseling session. I'll go with you. I'll wait in the lobby. I will be there with you the whole way. There's no shame in that. I mean, for some reason, there's sort of this taboo, this stigma about counseling, and it's just so helpful.
Yeah.
You need that safe space. You need to get it off your chest. Find somebody that you can trust. I know here in this area, we have a wonderful, on campus at Southern, we have wonderful counselors. And then, if you live more in downtown Chattanooga, there's another place there that's grounded, Christian, but licensed counselors. And sometimes that's what you need.
Yeah.
I would say, as a pastor, if somebody came to you that had been through physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional, any of that, how would you react to somebody who came to you? Would you say, I am all you need, sit and talk to me about all of these things? What would you tell that person?
Wow, that's really deep. I've had someone approach me with a similar situation, and I first tell them that I'm sorry that happened to them.
Of course. Yeah.
But I also recognize that I'm not a professional counselor. I know that I can't treat someone the way that a person who was trained to do so could. And so I will be there for that person as much as I can in the perspective of a pastor and a friend, but I will also suggest to them and give them someone's number who they can reach out to have those sessions, which you described as a privilege. I really love that, because I did counseling too. I had sessions here at Southern, or at Southern Adventist University, and it was really needed for me, and I recognized that comes from going to someone who knows what they're doing. And so I always will reference them to go back to someone that they could get help from.
Yeah.
What would you say to the person who experienced abuse many years ago, and they might feel like it was so far in the past? What would you say to that person who is not sure to bring it up anymore?
Go to counseling. No, I would say it will not hurt you to go and talk with somebody. It will only, look, I was 5 years old, right? Probably, maybe 4. I didn't go to counseling until after I was married. So I was 23, I think, when I started going to counseling sessions. And it felt fresh. But the things that were happening to me in my marriage, because of the things that happened to me when I was preschool age, it could have just shut it all down, and sometimes we have to go back and we have to bring things up. And let me also go back to another. So I would say go to counseling to answer that question. It will help. You need to talk about these things. Burying it will never, ever help. Okay, but also, and I'm not a licensed my husband should be answering this. He's the psychology guy. I already told you
but
this.
You're doing great too. I'm really enjoying this.
But I have gone to counseling, and I know that it helps. It helps me greatly. I've had friends who have gone to counseling, and it has helped them immensely. Things that were fresh and things that were from decades before, and so I just see it as only being something that can help. You're learning more about yourself. You're learning how you can live. It just sort of lifts the burden off of your shoulders. And so many of us carry this weight around and we don't even realize it. and we don't need to. And that's why a good licensed counselor can help us, get through it. They're not going to always say, oh, here's the answer, but they can help guide us through the process and give us techniques to use when we feel, I would get into these moments where that fight or flight feeling would hit me, it would trigger me. And I mean that in the truest form of a trigger. We use that term pretty loosely these days. But when you are legitimately triggered and you just shut down from your spouse, that is harmful to your marriage. So when those things were happening to me, I realized, I have to figure out how to navigate this. And prayer is very helpful, but there are techniques that you can use that a licensed counselor can give you, tools that can help guide you through that process. And I believe that God brings people into our lives, good counselors, pastors, to help lead us through these hard times.
Yeah. And how can someone protect themselves? Or how can I offer protection for a loved one? What is your perspective on that?
Just be a safe space. Don't blab. There was this story that I used to read when I was a kid called Safe as a Bank. And it was the idea that you would just be that harbor for somebody. Now, there are times, like I said, if they're potentially harming themselves or others, where you might have to go to another safe space that's at a different level than maybe I am at. But just being that safety for someone is really important.
Yeah.
And helping to guide them to help. Like say, I will go with you to a counselor or a support group of some sort if that is what you want. But listening, trusting that what they're saying is true, listening.
Yeah.
Those are the first two steps.
And at Southern or a similar institution, who should a student who has been abused approach? Should it just be their friends, or is there some sort of person at universities who deals with being able to work with these situations?
Well, at Southern we have our counseling services, and it happens to be in the Beats Center now.
That's awesome.
3rd floor.
Yeah.
So if you want to walk up there, I will walk with you. My office is on the 1st floor, so I can actually guide you up to 3rd floor. And you can go right in. I mean, their doors are open, and
yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of faculty and teachers on campus that I know are also, I would say, are safe places that you could go to as an initial stopping point and say, I need help. I mean, even if it's your advisor, I would just go to them and say, you don't have to divulge everything, but if you're not sure, find that safe person for you. It might be your advisor, it might be your roommate, it might be your pastor. Don't carry it on your own. That sometimes we feel like we don't want to be a burden to somebody else. But I would urge you to find that safe person.
Yeah.
It's important to find that. I really didn't have that growing up. And so I think maybe because my husband ended up being that safe person for me. And sometimes it takes a long time to find that person, and you carry it around for a while. And let me just also add, and I was going to say this earlier, I think in some cultures, and like I said, it's kind of taboo to go to counseling. It's almost like a sign of weakness. If you can't pray enough about it and you can't let God sort it, then there's something wrong with your spiritual walk. There's this taboo. There's also certain subcultures here, and I grew up one of my parents is part of one of those subcultures where it's like we keep it in the family. You don't need to blab about your personal stuff to a stranger. A licensed counselor is like a medical, I mean, like you would go to the doctor if you broke your leg, okay?
Definitely. No hesitation.
You know, this is actually in a lot of ways far worse than a broken bone. I mean, your mental health, and sometimes because the abuse is also physical, it's combined, but it's going to impact, like, I can't stress this enough. It will impact every part of your life.
It's long-term too.
And it's long-term. And it will affect the way you view God a lot of the time, you know, especially if, like, from a woman, well, it could be a man or a woman, but especially if God is portrayed as a man and it was a man that abused you. I mean, it can affect how you would view God. There's so many different areas of life that it will impact you. So going to a licensed counselor and sorting through it with somebody that has that medical background, it's important.
Yeah.
Because we're broken. I'm broken. I'll always be a little bit broken from what happened to me, you know?
I can relate. I can.
So, but we have these little techniques and these little tools that we use to guide us through when we have those trigger moments, right? And we learn that through counseling, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. This has been really meaningful for me, and I know it's going to be for those who are watching this right now.
I hope so.
Yeah, I really think so. And so I'll tell you to find help. If your friend has approached you, or if you're the one dealing with abuse in your life, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone you trust. There's help out there, and there's people out there who care about you too. We thank you for joining Tiny Chair Talks, where we have big conversations in tiny chairs. God bless you. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. We want to encourage you to like it, subscribe, and share it with someone so more people can benefit from Tiny Chair Talks.